So I watched this guy, the All-American Socialist, do a video on Jimmy Dore and Nick Briahna and the People's Party. Uh, Kamala Harris was really weird. I don't know if that's really her actual name, but somebody who apparently worked for the People's Party. Had some kind of gripe with them, was trying to whistle blow down on them, and I don't know, bring down the campaign or whatever. So I don't really know all the details, but what I do know is the guy was just incredibly fucking annoying. And I tend to listen to Jimmy Dore a lot. I appreciate his commentary and his humor, especially the impersonations of politicians, and even like during Bernie Sanders Bernie Sanders' campaign this last time around. I stopped listening to him. I was actually I only listened to the phone calls that came in because I was really frustrated with him, and I was really annoyed that he was constantly telling me and telling all of his listeners that Bernie Sanders is going to drop out, he's going to endorse Biden. It's a foregone conclusion, and this is going to happen anyway. So uh, and honestly, I mean, when it actually happened and what he predicted came true, I started to listen to him a little bit more and trust him a little bit more because he was telling me an uncomfortable truth, something that a lot of people, like people on TYT, they didn't have the courage to, to say what I think they should have known, having followed it a lot more closely than I did. Um, I mean, most of my life, I'm one of those Rage Against the Machine teens, uh, big Bill Hicks fan. All politicians are lying cocksuckers, or all governments are lying cocksuckers, but basically just, you know, uh, didn't really care a whole lot about the government, didn't really follow anything having to do with politics, thought it was all a bunch of bullshit. I had enough problems in my own life that, I just didn't really care. And then with Bernie Sanders and started to hear a lot of things that I could relate to, a lot of ideas and policies that I could get on board with, and got me a lot more interested in politics. I listened to the Young Turks. I listened to the Young Turks a lot during Bernie's 2020 campaign, and it was always, I mean, first of all, I mean, Cenk Uygur is just, he's fucking annoying. I mean, he really is. He's got to be like the most bombastic, just slob of a person, just got to be the most annoying person that you can ever like try and listen to. And then even I thought like Anna Kasparian was a little easier to digest because she wasn't just yelling and saying a bunch of like crazy shit that really meant nothing. But I've come to realize, and a lot of this, online back and forth with TYT and Jimmy Dore, I mean, has really exposed them for being uh, the real shills in the room, the real, try to think of the word. um, they're trying to profit. They're trying to profit off of and jump on the back of this sort of pseudo left or group of people um, that try to talk about things comfortably, like I'm doing from behind a webcam, and not get out there and really try to actually do anything to affect change. I mean, I guess Schenck did try and run for Congress, but it's pretty obvious that he's a narcissist. So that's a pretty good place for him to be, is in politics. And then when Bernie Sanders unendorsed him, I'm like, why? Why did Bernie Sanders unendorse him? But this whole thing with Jimmy Dore has kind of exposed that there's a whole lot of really just offensive content that they released, and I don't really typically have a problem with offensive content. I like dark humor, but a lot of their clips, the camel toe segments and everything, it's just very cringy. It's not very funny. It's not done very well, and it just sort of exposes them, especially when they try to prop themselves up as these moral high ground people that are disgusted by the really, you know, really tempered, even though Jimmy Dore may not seem tempered to most people, very like tempered vulgarity that he exude. Um, but it's becoming increasingly more obvious that there's two, very different camps on the left. So that's the left can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So the progressive left, or this sort of pundit, independent media, activist left, or you've got the activist movement, people that go out in the street, and like the most recent March for Medicare for All. You have the progressive left, or I guess you could say the social democrat that followed Bernie Sanders. Um, so there's one camp, and I would look at them and I would say that they're the true left in whatever sense that you can be pure and in a very undefined movement. And I think even though it's been going on for a long time, this progressive movement still is largely undefined, and there's no real clear um, actions to take. There's no real clear leader without Bernie Sanders. Um, and of course, everything with the squad and with AOC and the disappointment that a lot of people feel in them would take a lot of time to unpack. Um, but there is a left, and if we deal with just mostly the pundits for now, these are people that are really ready. They're ready to pursue ideas. They're ready to pursue actions that will actually achieve their goals. Goals like Medicare for All, ending these foreign wars and interventions, defunding the police, and that means, of course, like more precisely, reallocating funds from a militarized police force to things like social services, addiction centers, rehabs, um, and basically removing this sort of militarized Gestapo like police that prowl the streets, and mostly in poor communities, and they're armed and they're ready to use violence. And situations that really should be relegated to social workers, people who are prepared, EMS workers, paramedics, people ready to deal with drug addiction, homelessness, these kinds of issues. They're not solved by a man who carries a big stick or a big meathead with a gun. Um, so, there are those that are willing to go as far as necessary to continue this fight, and they go against the winds of unpopularity. So, I know that Jimmy Dore says a lot that he doesn't have a boss. There's nobody that he's afraid of offending. Um, and that's nice. It's very nice to listen to a person, even if you may cringe at some of the things they say, even if you may feel like their delivery is, just a little bit too extreme for your liking. I really try to listen the most to people that are willing to say and voice the opinion that is not sort of sanctioned. It's not the sanitized, okay opinion. It's the one that's going to get them in a lot of trouble. It's going to get them a lot of pushback, and yet they're still willing to say it anyways. And you could say that that's done for clicks or to gain a following, but either whatever the motivations are, I think it's irrelevant. Certain things really do need to be said, and I really appreciate that they say them. There's a lot of people that his show has turned me on to as well. You've got the whole gray zone. I've got Max Blumenthal. I've got Aaron Matei. Very intelligent people who are also willing to stick their necks out and present an unpopular opinion. And isn't that, no matter what side of the left you're on, and I'll get to the other side of the left in a minute, but or the pundit left online, but um, no matter which side you're coming from, if you call yourself a left, you're fighting for progressive change, you're fighting for change in society. You want to see things get better for poor people, for people that have historically suffered and been oppressed. See systemic changes come about. in was increasingly becoming more and more an oligarchical society that is, just controlled, known by very few people up at the top, and then there's all us little guys down here at the bottom that really don't have a lot of people to listen to. You don't have a lot of guidance. I can't think of the last time I've watched CNN or NBC, any of the or sanctioned news media sites in a very long time. So I spent most of my time looking at progressive media online. Um, so uh, you've got, of course, a very good example of a real, true fighter on the left is Julian Assange. You've got a man that risked everything to publish documents that exposed war crimes. The Iraq War, the deception that led us into that, that was one of the first, um, the first uh, things that started to get me interested in politics in any form or fashion. Really, I can't even say I was interested in politics, but I knew it was wrong. I remember seeing a news interview. I have no idea what station it was. The guy was talking about these tubes that they had filmed, these aluminum tubes that they had filmed. They said they were casings for nuclear missiles. And they had a very, at least confident sounding person come on and very clearly explain that this is building material, that the aluminum is too thin, it can be used to launch a missile at all. And yet, despite that and all the different evidence that came out and all of the lack of finding any sort of justification for military intervention in that country, we still went in, and so many people really just up in arms to go ahead and do that. So, you have this on the other side, you have these pundits, and what we should really do is just call them what they are, and what they are is posers. Um, they wear the clothing of a progressive. They speak in these authoritative sounding tones, and they're very well educated, and they want everyone to speak nicely to each other. And it's funny because they're the exact same people that will criticize this sort of Obama-like um, politics of niceties. Um, it's a system of control to control the way that people speak to each other and to try and say that they have to be polite to each other. It's an easy way to shut down a conversation. So you have people like Foch, who I really didn't listen to a whole lot, but you've got this fucking just this idiot that's very, very good at, just like Donald Trump was, at sounding like a used car salesman using these sales tactics to just say a whole bunch of verbal diarrhea, just a bunch of words that sound really good when you sort of put them together, and people probably, most of his audience probably doesn't understand half of the words that he even uses. And he's got this voice that I personally find to be just completely annoying, and just it sounds very pompous and very arrogant. Um, well, you've got this guy that so many people are following. You've got Sam Seder. I used to listen to Majority Report a lot, and that was when I was trying to like cycling through TYT Majority Report. I have a lot of time. The job that I work requires me to be in my car for hours and hours on end, a lot of days, and so I'm listening to podcasts. So got Sam Seder, another arrogant sounding person who just toes the line. I mean, he is not going to risk saying anything offensive. And it's interesting to point out that both TYT and the Majority Report both have essentially what are in NBC contracts because they're all in Peacock. And Peacock is owned by NBC. They're owned by Comcast. So these are fake leftists. They're not really independent media. They're owned by one of the most disgusting organizations when it comes to actually giving like an honest opinion on progressive movements and values. And we all remember during the Bernie Sanders campaign, you've got an MSNBC pundit calling Nina Turner, a a black girl from the island of misfit black girls, or some really, really just offensive uh, smear, and on and on and on. All these people coming on just to try and detract from the actual issues and talking about actual, policies and things that Bernie Sanders was bringing into the national conversation, things that could actually truly impact people's lives, people that are suffering in this country. And we have so many resources and we can do so much to help people, but that is obviously not what people in power are interested in. And if you come and try and change that system, there's a whole lot of blowback that comes back at you. So, I mean, that alone should completely discredit them from having any sort of authoritative voice, or being any sort of gatekeepers for the left. Um, so, uh, the only they'll go so far as to just sort of tepidly dip their toe into some sort of revolutionary sounding language. But they won't go too far because they have bosses, they have masters, they have people that will tell them that there are things that they cannot say. Um, Benjamin Dixon, that's another guy that I used to listen to a lot. It did bother me, and I just saw a tweet from him today. It did bother me that he would always just talk in such strong tones about how we all need to lock down and we all need to stay inside of our homes and we can't go out and we've got to just stay isolated in our homes. And I always thought it was a little bit tone deaf for a person that, just this newfound celebrity that he got, digging up some dirt on Bloomberg. And he's, obviously monetizing that popularity and building following. And a lot of the stuff that he was saying was good. He's talking about burning down the Democratic Party because of what they were doing to Bernie Sanders. You see how quickly he flipped when they started to put him on TV. And his podcast started to blow up a little bit. I think he actually has an NBC contract now. Um, so these people are sellouts, and they don't represent any kind of revolutionary um, revolutionary tactics will actually cause real change. And, going back to Jimmy Dore, no matter what you might think of him, no matter what you might think of how his delivery comes across, he has a message that is pretty consistent. It was another thing I liked about Bernie Sanders, and one of the more consistent points that he tries to bring across is that you have to tell, and he uses this clip. Um, can't remember the name of the person now, but he uses the clip of a person telling you that he worked within the Democratic Party and he did not have to listen to anybody on the left because they had nowhere to go. And if we don't show the Democratic Party that we're willing to not vote for them, they don't have to do anything for us. And I think that's one of the biggest things that happens when people get elected to a position of power. And it'll happen in your workplace, it happens anywhere. When you get comfortable in holding a position of power, so you don't have people looking over you, you've made it. You won the election. You don't have to earn any more votes till the next election comes up. You don't want anything to threaten that position that you have because it is very, very comfortable. What happened to all of the leaders that we had in the past? What happened to the people like Malcolm X who openly acknowledged that he would be shot, that he was willing to die for what he believed in? And we build a celebrity around politicians that they wouldn't even risk a meal for you. They wouldn't risk a night's sleep for you. They wouldn't risk not sleeping in a comfortable bed for you. Um, so we really have to re-examine where our loyalties lie. We certainly shouldn't be making politicians into celebrities. It is a trade-off. It is you do this for me, and I will give you my vote. And that's it. It's really, really simple. These people are never above criticism, and they should constantly be challenged. And of course, challenging the people, like how when Black Max Blumenthal went out and tried to speak to Cori Bush, he had access to her because he's within her circle somewhat and has a close enough ideology to her so that she knows who he is and the books that he's written. She's seen his reporting, and she gave him at least a little bit of time to talk to her. You're not going to get that from Gomer or whatever the fuck, some Republican senator, some other more repugnant politician. You have to take it where you can get it. So you have Jimmy Dore going on Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is a piece of shit. Plain and simple. He's a complete fucking piece of shit. But he does take some risk. I'm sure it's for his own personal benefit to have some left voices on his show. And for whatever it's worth, it's good. I mean, so I remember I worked a job. I worked at a tool rental agency. One of the owners of the company, um, it was this old man, 90-year-old man, and he was in this little house on property. And I went over and I saw him one day, and he was watching Fox News. And Fox News is on 24 hours a day. So, just watching Fox News all day. And this was, I don't know, 10 years ago, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And it was all, I'm sure it is still all this. I have not watched Fox News in a long time. But, it's all, hey, the terrorists are going to come and kill you, fear, 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 propaganda, fear the other. The terrorists are going to murder you in your sleep, and they're going to come and they're going to steal your country. And I see Jimmy Dore on Tucker Carlson, and he says that this is his objective, and whatever's around it, you can make whatever you want of it. But he does manage to, in that little shot clock that he has counting down in front of him, he manages to say on Fox News, all of these brainwashed people that are glued to that station, being constantly propagandized by it, he has a chance to try and shatter their ideology and say that both parties don't do anything for you and that they're all interested in war for profit. I appreciate him for that. I appreciate him doing that. I appreciate Aaron Mate going to Syria. I don't know who is part of that coalition that brought him there. How many of you would do research on all the people that are going to be in some sort of humanitarian mission to another country um, before going? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about these people. Maybe they do have motives that are hidden. But for them to challenge a narrative, to challenge this authority from above that tells us what to think, what we should say, when we should say it, what we should do, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. We have to have voices out there that are willing to challenge those things. I've never done this before. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm putting my face and my voice out there on YouTube to talk, and probably nobody's going to listen to this. Sure, it's not very polished. It's not very much prepared. An idea of what I was going to say beforehand. It all just coming right off the top of my head. Um, I'm not even going to give my name. Um, and I don't know everything. I know very little. But I am very stubbornly anti-authoritarian person. And that is anti-authoritarian whether it comes from the right or whether it comes from the left. I grew up when it was right, putting the parental advisory sticker on CDs and telling us that people using curse words in music was wrong. And then they've got people like Eminem try and shatter that for a whole generation of young people. And now we have the left doing the same exact thing. And you got to call it for what it is. It's the same exact thing. They are policing people's speech and telling them what they can and cannot say. So there's really not a whole lot of difference between the two sides. And there really is. There's those at the top and there's us down here at the bottom. And I would really like, I'm lucky enough to um, have anyone hear this, anyone engage with it, um, to potentially do something where I can just give my opinion on things. If that's the case, I would like to take it in a direction where, I named the channel Question Authority. I love Timothy Leary quote, rant, um, and not only just questioning these things that we're told to believe, but also looking for solutions and real concrete solutions. We've all seen that electoralism is not getting us very far, if anywhere at all. We see people go out on the streets. We've seen mass protests against police violence. We've seen mass protests for Medicare for all. We saw the Bernie Sanders movement. We saw how many crowds that he drew. I am one of those people who are just sitting there waiting for somebody to say, go. Somebody to say, all hope is not lost. And honestly, I mean, fuck all of those people that have been defeated. Um, I could throw out names. I already did. But I'm looking for the voices that are going to say, hey, you know what? We can still fight. And give us some kind of concrete actions that we can take. So I wasn't part of the Occupy Wall Street. I wasn't out there in the streets with them. And I think that sparked something in the powers that be, especially the Bernie Sanders campaign. Of course, the Bernie Sanders campaign has people who have the means and the power to look at a large scale from a bird's eye view to try and stifle popular movements that will threaten their power and position, whether it's because they have nefarious means or whether they're just lazy, comfortable, elitist assholes who just want to sit back and relax and live a comfortable life and not do a goddamn thing for us, even though the reason that they have that comfortable life afforded to them is because they won votes from people and they told them that they were going to do something to change their lives for the better. So you have to make those people uncomfortable. You have to tell them that you're not going to vote for them. And we have to come up with persistent and targeted campaigns, whether it's sit-ins, whether it's marches, whether it's protests, but it can't just start for a little while and then die off. And you got to form leaderships, you got to form movements where you actually have an objective and a goal, and you strategically choose and strategically try to implement it. It's the only way we're going to get anywhere. There's way more of us than there are of them. So I'm going to sign off for now. And thanks for listening. I guess like and subscribe. I don't know, figure this shit out. But maybe I'll never do one of these again.